Triple Tactic Talents is a pretty interesting card. I only hear really polarizing opinions concerning the card, so either people saying that it's completely broken and must get banned, or that it's complete garbage and shouldn't be played whatsoever. Essentially, I only hear the two extremes and never really see anyone saying that it's really average. But realistically, just how good is Triple Tactic Talents in the current metagame? I'll go straight to the point. If you only see Triple Tactic Talents as additional copies of Call by the Grave, you're already off to a bad start. And I'm saying that because unfortunately this view is shared by many. And just like Call by the Grave, Crossout Designator is also more than just an anti-handshop card, but for some reason people only really see it as such. Quite clearly, Triple Tactic Talents is much better going second than first, because if you're going first, you really have to rely on the fact that your opponent will be using, very specifically, a monster effect on your main phase. That means that if you're getting shifted or Lanciad on your standby or draw phase, or if you're getting hit by an infinite impermanence, you're unfortunately kinda screwed. Not to mention that the draw 2 effect cannot be used under Droll, and that effect might get hit by an Ash. But to be fair, the general consensus is usually the fact that Triple Tactic Talents' best effect is the Forceful Sentry one. The hand knowledge is insane because if you know what your opponent has, then you can recalibrate and end on a different board. And you have a lot of freedom depending on what you want to do, so either make your opponent lose another hand trap or make your opponent lose a consistency card. But if you are using the hand ripping effect, you're also under some pressure yourself. You started your turn with 5 cards, let's say your first card get hit by an Ash, and then you're using talents to make your opponent lose 1 card. So you went from 5 cards to 3 cards, and your opponent also went from 5 cards to 3 cards. But if the rest of your hand is not too great and your opponent also top decks into a 4th good card, then you're also screwed yourself. And also if you're using a card like Pot of Desires and you got hit by an Ash and then you're using talents to draw 2, all you're really doing is going back to 5 cards. Obviously, you would be at 5 cards and your opponent would be at 4, meaning that you're still up in relative card advantage, but it's not necessarily the best case scenario. And if your opponent's one and only hand trap is Nibiru, then it means that your talents will be dead until you fully get Nibiru'd. And by the time you get nibbed, maybe you won't be able to fully recover with Triple Tactic Talents. So overall, I'd say that maybe a little over 50% of the time, Triple Tactic Talents is not really too good going first. Now, when it comes to going second, everything changes. Looking at your opponent's hand going second is no longer the best effect unless you're playing against a deck like Vanquish Soul. And the reason why I say that is because they actually rely on having a bunch of attributes in the hand, so maybe if you make them lose a card like Ash, it can be like a 2-in-1 package deal. They lose Ash, which is an interruption, and since they lose a fire monster, they might not be able to pop a card with Ryzen. But of course, Talents is beyond broken against certain kind of boards. Some people like to compare the stealing effect to Change of Heart, but at the same time, it's actually much closer to Dark Lore Temptation. It doesn't target, meaning that it's extremely good against Kashtira. Unlike Change of Heart, they can't really banish whatever you're trying to target, because again, Triple Tactic Talents will not target, so against the board of a Rizard and Fenrir, it's actually really insane. And a Rizard is a mandatory effect, so regardless of whether they're trying to not play into Talents or not, they will always lose to Talents. And this is why I really understand why people say that Talents is really broken in this format. Might not necessarily be broken against everyone, but against Kashtira, which is the most popular deck, it is fantastic. At least going second. And even post game 1, Talents is still really good because let's just say your opponent has Solemn Judgment, which is one of the only ways to deal with Talents, it might not be the best way to deal with it. Solemn Judgment negates the activation, and Triple Tactic Talents is a you can only activate 1 copy once per turn, so if you draw multiple and the first one gets negated, it's not the end of the world. It loses to Eradicator Virus, which is really annoying, but if your opponent uses something like Dogmatica Punishment, your Talents can be live. They would be sending cards like Garua or Elder Entity Entis, and that would be a monster effect. And it's also super busted against Flunderies because they can only really use their effects on your main phase. Long story short, you'd rather draw this card going second than first. So now you might be thinking, okay, you can fix pretty much every issue of this card by side decking it instead of main decking it. Well, perhaps, but are you really trying to side a card like Triple Tactic Talents? The goal of a side deck is to incorporate very broken and specific cards to a given situation. And the thing about Triple Tactic Talents is that it was kind of inherently designed to be universally applicable and generic. So it might not necessarily be enough to break boards unlike cards like Dark Ruler. As a matter of fact, it might be a card that helps you when you're already doing well, but doesn't necessarily save you from being completely screwed. And to be honest, hand traps have actually fallen off as of lately. So Triple Tactic Talents going first post game 1 is actually way worse because your opponent might be replacing hand traps with like board breakers. The way I see it is, it's one of the best deck failures to play when you have absolutely no idea what else to play. And this card has an equally high probability of disappointing you as it does of carrying you. But I maintain my initial stance about the card. Either broken, either bad, and you can either activate it or not activate it if your opponent did not play into it. If people randomly start main decking board breakers instead of hand traps, then this card will be completely useless in the main deck and only be a going second card. And we actually saw that in the Tearlaments and Sprite format before the Ishizu cards. And again, you probably should not be side decking this card if you only see it as an additional copy of Call by the Grave. Anyways, that's all I had for this video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and let me know your thoughts about Triple Tactic Talents in the comment section below. And I'll see you guys very soon. Peace.